I thought before we start talking about the key things about artificial intelligence and biological intelligence, you could call them AI and BI if you want to look at. I want to show you a video which we were working on 31 years ago approximately. This was something which was our touch at what you might call we call it Knowledge Navigator in Apple. This is the preliminary research which we were looking at in terms of how do intelligence actually manifest, how can agents, if there were to be any, how would they support and work with? Let's see.
You have 3 messages. Your graduate research team in Guatemala, just checking in. Robert Jordan, a second semester junior, requesting a second extension on his term paper. And your mother reminding you about your father.
Surprise birthday party next Sunday.
Today you have a faculty lunch at 12 o'clock. You need to take Kathy to the airport by 2. You have a lecture at 4:15 on deforestation in the Amazon rainforest.
Right. Let me see the lecture notes from last semester. No, that's not enough. I need to review more recent literature. Pull up all the new articles I haven't read yet.
Journal articles only?
Fine.
Your friend Jill Gilbert has published an article about deforestation in the Amazon and its effects on rainfall in the sub-Sahara. It also covers drought's effect on food production in Africa and increasing imports of food.
Contact Jill.
I'm sorry, she's not available right now. I left a message that you had called.
Okay. Let's see. There's an article about 5 years ago, Dr. Flemson or something. He really disagreed with the direction of Jill's research.
John Fleming of Uppsala University. He published in the Journal of Earth Science of July 20 of 2006.
Yes, that's it. He was challenging Jill's projection of the amount of carbon dioxide being released to the atmosphere through deforestation. I'd like to recheck his figures.
Here is the rate of deforestation he predicted.
And what happened? He was really off. Give me the University Research Network. Show only universities with geography nodes. Show Brazil. Copy the last 30 years at this location at 1 month intervals.
Excuse me, Jill Gilbert is calling back.
Great. Put her through.
Hi, Mike. What's up?
Jill, thanks for getting back to me. Well, I guess that new grant of yours hasn't dampened your literary abilities. Rumor has it that you've just put out the definitive article on deforestation.
Aha. Is this one of your typical last-minute panics for lecture material?
It would be great if you were available to make a few comments. Nothing formal. After my talk, you would come up on the big screen, discuss your article, and then answer some questions from the class.
You know, I have a simulation that shows the spread of the Sahara over the last 20 years. Here, let me show you.
Nice. Very nice. I've got some maps of the Amazon area during the same time. Let's put these together. Interesting. I can definitely use this. Thanks for your time, Jill. I really appreciate it.
No problem. But next time I'm in Berkeley, you're buying the dinner.
Dinner, right.
See ya, 4:15.
Bye-bye.
While you were busy, your mother called again to remind you to pick up the birthday cake.
Fine. Print this article before I go.
Now printing.
Okay, I'm going to lunch now. If Kathy calls, tell her I'll be there at 2 o'clock. Also, find out if I can set up a meeting tomorrow morning with, Tom Lee.
Enjoy your lunch. Hello, Professor Bradford is away at the moment. Would you like to leave a message?
Michael, this is your mother. I know that you're there. I'm just calling to remind you to call your sister and...
Nice. Very nice.
Very nice.
Very smart.
The series elder brother.
Yeah. So that, why I showed you that video is,
Sharing information on the internet is profoundly changing how we communicate. In the near future, using the internet will be as common as using telephone services we have today.
okay.
Well, it was interesting. It was a
Right.
1987 production,
Oh my God.
87 production, but it said back in 2006.
That is when it was put on the YouTube.
No.
So it was produced in 1987.
But was it a forecasted discussion in the future that's recalled what happened in 2006?
Exactly.
Okay.
So it was. So as you can see, a lot about what you might call a speaker independent speech, recognition, integration of multiple media, the ability to parse what various people are speaking, and trying to, if this guy, they can context dependent way in which they can make connections. There was a large amount of stuff that was, at that time it was a pie in the sky kind of research. Now we experience it all the time. The way in which the artificial intelligence has penetrated, whether it is in the name of machine learning, whether it is in the name of robotics or driverless cars or any of them, has become phenomenal. As a matter of fact, just last month, there was a report that came out that basically says, of course, this article in Sloan Management Review is only about a month old, basically says that whether it is health, whether it is commerce, environment, or learning and education, which are pretty much all areas that are important to our life, are going to be affected significantly because of these 7 technology areas. And essentially these core technologies basically are changing how we address not just the problems that we already know, but what you call like a wicked problems, the problems for which we have no idea how to even approach. Like for example, in Africa, sometimes the problem is not oil, it is even water. As you know, in Cape Town in South Africa, already the water has become a bigger issue that it has to be brought in from other parts of the world. And if there is fire, the idea of drones to be able to supply various things from one to another is a new technology that is coming up. So there is a large amount of rethinking that what we call intelligence and what is being connected to natural intelligence and ubiquity of some of these things can impact the world in a significantly different manner, much more than they have already affected. If you talk about these as technologies, if you talk about financial value, according to a report that just came out last month, April of 2018, McKinsey says the potential economic value of artificial intelligence could be between 3.5 to 5.6 trillion dollars, adding to what is already there. So it is not like taking away, it is not like taking jobs away, or it is not like something else, but this is the kind of opportunity that they see as the potential expansion of economic scenario because of the research that is being done in the artificial intelligence. The key would be, and the hope, what people are saying, and actually this Fast Company article is as of today that came in, basically they say while the potential is enormous and the impact can be large, from climate change to public health to armed conflict to poverty elimination, when all of these are there, there are also some significant questions that are coming about. The significant questions that come about, for example, this is just a reference, like another thing, Alexa, Siri, all of these, they can hear certain commands, but you cannot. Because the idea is that already some hackers have created some way in which into the songs and into the music, into advertisements, they have created certain commands that could be interpreted by Alexa or Siri and execute on those commands that you may not even recognize that it has been done. So that means you can go buy some airline tickets, it can work on your bank accounts, it can do certain things that you might not even know that it is happening if your phone or iPad or computer are nearby, and if they are connected with your Alexa or Siri or Cortana or Google, there can be all kinds of things that can be done. And research in China as well as research in Princeton, they have found that you can send messages and voice commands in ultrasonic frequencies that you cannot hear, that can completely execute various kinds of things and you won't even know. And of course, people started saying, no, Alexa and all of them, you can turn some of the things off and they are not listening to unless you start Alexa this, okay Google, hey Siri. But they have found, and I have actually reference to the hack that you can put in. Once you put in that hack, it can listen to you 24/7 and record every conversation and everything that is happening in the room. And automatically it can send it to you, it can send it to somebody else, all of that is possible. So what it means is that it is extraordinarily dangerous. Let me take the danger to one more level. After the shooting last month, myself and a few friends who are researching in some of the area about what can be done, and one friend of mine, Alice Duncan, and myself, we were talking about and we experimented. So you can actually say, hey Siri, where can I buy AR-15, see I just said hey Siri, right? Where can I buy AR-15 rifles? Okay, so I got mixed up, let me say it again. Hey Siri, where can I buy AR-15 rifles today? It can tell you immediately where is the nearest area where you can buy guns, whether there are any, right, whether there are more deals on that, any of that. But at the same time, by the way, I checked this out with all the 3 or 4 devices that are there. On the other hand, if you ask them, you know, I'm feeling depressed, what can I do? Can you help me? It says, me, and it will tell a joke. On the other hand, if you try to say, you know, my family member has been extremely sick, I am like unable to see, and I feel like, you know, just killing myself. And it gives you suggestions on how to kill yourself. What we realized was, while the intelligence is moving extraordinarily well and it has got implications of significantly beneficial ways, it can expand our revenues, it can expand our wealth, it can help us in many different ways, because it is being programmed by human beings where the boundaries of ethics, boundaries of morals, boundaries of what need to be programmed is not yet properly put in. The compassion is not something that is available. For example, you can create a SDK. If any of Google or any of these companies can come up with SDKs which will allow them to incorporate if there are some mental illnesses, if there is depression, if a person is feeling down, if a person is unhealthy, It could very easily direct them to, hey, here is a hotline that you can call, suicide hotline, or if you are feeling depressed, here is some mental health hotline, or here are some groups that you can go nearby that are not too far from you, that if you attend this evening sessions, you may be feeling better. And there are other people who have lost some family members. There are some bereavement groups you can attend. It is not very difficult for any of these compassion, empathy, connection, health, well-being stuff to be programmed into any of these intelligent agents. But it is not being done, not because the intelligence is not there, but because the way in which we have created these intelligent agents are all about economic basis or certain kinds of frames that each company is thinking about. Like for example, Facebook, if you take, why would it have not recognized the Cambridge Analytica and what it has done and Russian hacking? Because the metrics by which the AI, many of the systems are designed for certain kinds of user engagement, or what you might call a participant engagement. If that is what the metric is, it doesn't have any other guidelines regarding who is sending the message, what is happening, and how is it being done. For example, today there is news saying that a gentleman sent an electronic message to the post office making the UPS mail to come to his address. So thousands of packages and checks and all of them he got just in one day, and he was able to take advantage of that. So the idea it comes down to is, along with the AI increasing its capabilities to help us, unless we begin to bring our own intelligence to create appropriate directions to either augment or to amplify or to be able to create appropriate value system, ethical guidance that the systems that AI systems cannot override. If we don't begin to design it, it doesn't exactly work. And of course, there is a XKCD comic, there was a show, and even there are some comic shows that came out I think last season. There were some shows where children teach all these artificial agents to speak obscenities very quickly, and that was taken out very quickly because of obviously the problems. On the other hand, there are people, well-meaning people, who are trying to address some things like deforestation or some things like cross-pollination, because the number of bees have reduced. Because in many of the cities we have so many houses which are replacing, for example, whether it is prune yards or whether it is other kinds of gardens, other kinds of forests and water areas. The animal kingdom, flora and fauna have reduced significantly. Because of that, there are questions that have come about what you might call bees. How do you do that? And then they decided they will create robo-bees that will actually look at what's happening, and then they can do the cross-pollination. Excellent idea, remarkably good thinking, but the intelligence with which we design, we do not have the ability to really look at systemically overall what's going on, because bees, when they die, they become food for other kinds of birds, and they are organic. What they do and how they do, when they do, the seasons, the intelligence of evolutionary consciousness that is already timed and programmed into organic or a biological intelligence like a bee, is not easy to be programmed into the size of, the bee size drone to have the kind of intelligence that it is required. And similarly, there have been talked about drone seeded forests. So you can read about all of these, but the key which we need to look at is, unless the biological intelligence and the artificial intelligence begin to work together, and begin to co-create and co-evolve, you cannot actually have artificial intelligence to be done only from the rational, logical intellect that we have. There is a lot about this mosquito attack, which can talk about certain security computers. Like for some of the people who are in the technology field, they know about air-gapped computers, which are not connecting to the external system. They are isolated so that they cannot be, like a virus does not affect and any of them that could be done. But they found out by putting some of the music through the windows into the building, they can actually activate some of them so that they can even affect the what you call air-gapped computers. So that means whatever we consider as safe computers which affect what you might call the electricity or PG&E system or water or electric grid or airline air traffic control, all of them could also be affected, not necessarily by the people who are well-meaning, but there will always be an element which wants to sabotage some of the kinds of things. So that means as we really begin to think about artificial intelligence, along with all the positive, the shadow side of it also have to be really thought through. And of course people can say, yes, there are algorithmic based ways of measuring. There was an article which just showed something like somebody had created, like if Facebook code, if it can be audited by ethics person, ethics a company from outside, which measures and say, when you are developing this system, does it target Muslims or does it ignore white people? Does it ignore racially, certain segregated population? Or in your comments, are you making it diversity and all other kinds of parameters included? Have you looked at, when you look at medicine, have you looked at alternative medicine? Like that, to make sure ethical various guidelines that can be done, and there is a software that is available, and people are looking at algorithmic way of assessment for the software, so that the companies can say, we try to look at the shadow side, we look at the bright side, we look at the diversity, all of them we have included, so that if there are some legal repercussions, that will help them. There are some such things that are coming in, except that aligning the values to human beings, which is where I think there is a significant need and opportunity that has not been a priority, because the metrics with which we design the AI systems have not yet looked at values. So of course they talk about, in the technology, they talk about reverse inversion approaches, so that it is not based on what you do, but how you actually get the things done and what needs to be talked about, you could think about. And of course, just last month in the annual founder letter, Sergey Brin, one of the founders of Google, says we will protect against AI attacks. We are going to focus on the human attention. And of course, 2 days ago, as you know, they are the first one to create what they call a Google duplex, which allows you to actually have a computer can call up and have a conversation with a human being to set up appointments and all kinds of things. So it is amazing technological development that is happening. Once unthinkable, even 30 years ago when Thierry and myself, when we were working in Apple, some of these were only like pipe dreams. But now they are not just a reality, they are taken for granted, and without some of these technologies, we wouldn't even know what to do, right? So if this is where we are going, I thought we should really examine what is the intelligence from biological perspective and silicon perspective. So one of the things which I thought we should look at is, if we were to look at the AI, as it is called artificial intelligence, is much more of intellect driven, because it is rational, logical. Once upon a time we used to do Prolog and Lisp and that kind of system, but now it is neural nets and continually learning, adaptive learning, deep learning, machine learning happens. You don't need to do too much of programming. but still it's a mechanical system. It's a technological system versus an organic system. The intellect by definition is competitive. It is designed to succeed. It is designed to win, whereas it is not about collective intelligence. Very rarely, if there is other kinds of AI systems, it does not know how to coexist. Like a Siri doesn't play very well with Alexa. On WhatsApp I saw a very interesting comment. I think probably everybody must have seen the dialogue between Alexa and Siri, and how Google says that's why we don't give human names, right? The logical decision making is where the AI is focusing on that it can help. But the true biological intelligence is about making ethical choices. Decision comes from decide, that means to cut, eliminate. Decide means to eliminate certain choices so that you can come to one answer, one direction in which you can go. Choice, on the other hand, can be multiple. Some can be fuzzy choices, some can be immediate choices, some can be systemic choices. So it opens up an open-ended way of looking at where we want to go versus a closed-ended way of coming to a decision. That means the AI systems are past-driven to come to the present moment, whereas the human intelligence is starting in the present moment to create future scenarios. While AI can be readjusted, in a biomechanical way or in any other way to be able to focus, but still the time is linear and going from now to the future in the AI context, whereas as human beings we know when we can go back to what happened 20 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We can go back and resolve that issue with somebody, and then suddenly we can wipe that slate clean regarding either the anger or frustration or love or infatuation, whatever we had with that person, so that we can start all over again. That kind of intelligence moving from past to the future, future to the past, that means time independent rather than linear time, is a very interesting difference between a biological intelligence and the artificial intelligence that we are talking about. And then the rigid versus flexible. The logic with which we design, that means the artificial intelligence system, as we are defining it, we need to define it from the beginning to the end, and how it grows, how it evolves, how it changes has to be programmed into it before we put the system into practice. Even though we can make changes, we can make the code to change, and we can make the guidelines to be changed and altered as we go and update it continually, but at least something need to be from the beginning. I was just watching, for example, we had a swimming pool in our home for a long time, and about 2 years ago we decided we will let go of the swimming pool. Instead we will put an organic garden, edible garden in the back. It is amazing to see how, when depending on the season, whether the spring comes early or late, whether the coldness is there or not there, the fruits and the flowers and the leaves, all of them adjust themselves. Like for example, we have some guava fruit which normally had been giving fruit around December through February. This time, only in March they started actually, getting bigger, and even now they are not fully ripe. So the intelligence in a biological system, whether you call bees, whether you call trees, whether you call birds, whether you call large animals in addition to human beings, it looks like the intelligence has a way of becoming context sensitive on when to flower and when to become a fruit, when not to flower, all of these. And when there is a shock, for example, we had a fig tree, when we closed the swimming pool, because there were lots of work that was done near the fig tree, for about a year it didn't give any fruit. because it went through certain trauma, and the trauma resulted in you not getting the fruit. So there is certain aliveness, there is a certain way in which it actually can let you know certain, maybe it is primitive in our case, like in our way of thinking, the emotions that are shown by the trees or the dogs or some other animals, but those things come naturally based on interactions and in a context sensitive way. That is still something, it is to be programmed, it is not yet properly thought about. And finally, and most importantly, the AI system is efficient. Biological intelligence is redundant. We have, two eyes and two nostrils and 2 ears and 2 hands and 2 legs. Why is that? And we have 2 lobes, and we know that once upon a time it was not known, even 20-30 years ago. We know now that the neurons keep regenerating, and as a matter of fact in brain, if there is a damage to a certain part of the brain, there are certain other parts, actually they will begin to function and they will begin to work on taking over the missing links. George Wald, one gentleman, he got a Nobel Prize because he found out even in a frog, if you take the skin from the front and put it in the back, because there was some burning or something has happened to the frog, it actually begins to adapt and knows where the cells are and knows what it needs to do at that particular part of the body, and it actually changes. That means there is no CPU that is required for some of them. That means these are holographic, if I were to use a metaphoric way of looking at. They are, and another way people talk about it as they are holonic. Holon is a word Arthur Kessler used to say anything that is whole by itself but is part of a larger system. So for example, an atom is a whole by itself but it is part of a molecule, like a water molecule. Hydrogen is an atom, independent, oxygen is an atom, but when they put together you get water molecule, H2O, when you look at. But you can look at a molecule to be part of a larger cell in a biological system, and a cell to be part of a larger organism, and so all of these are some way, somehow in a holographic way, the intelligence is embedded in the cellular thing. Of course that metaphor is being used in artificial intelligence to be able to see how we design it, but that part of redundancy, it is not about wastefulness, but it is about having a backup for a backup, and that type of a thinking is something that is very interesting. The next point which I just want to make, and then we will move towards the other part and I will take questions and any of them. And by the way, in case you have any doubts or you have any points of view which you want to bring in, please stop me at any time as well.
So may I make an observation over here, sir?
Yeah, please.
Because you're talking about redundancy.
Yeah.
One is of course that having 2 eyes gives you stereoscopic vision. Or,
correct.
So those are more features that you get because of the redundancy. Of
Yeah.
course, there's a backup.
Yeah.
But the whole design of the internet itself
Yeah.
is fundamentally a redundant design network.
That's right.
So we did something right.
You did, we did. Exactly. I completely agree.
Yeah.
And also the intelligence and the crowdsourcing, the big data, when you look at, all of these obviously we are using nature to emulate our technological design. Only thing I am suggesting is, it is not one of them that need to be there, but all of them need to be there, because if you have redundancy, like for example backup systems, we have redundancy. Majority of the time we try to, especially important type of things, you create a redundant backup. When you do that, that is great. But where is the fundamental intelligence that is being built into it? For a big data, the assumptions with which big data is being used, if they are wrong, the big data can lead us far away from where we intend to go. So the volition and thought, these are the 2 important parts for a biological intelligence. That means the will or intention and the intelligence, and how the intelligence and the what you might call the intelligence, how they are used in a biological system, will address a little bit more, but that's where I want to get to. Goal directed system, you can say, there is a purpose driven system you can build, but how do you make that purpose itself to be redundant, purpose itself to have ethical values, and purpose itself not to be modified by a machine for efficiency, but for human values? And what gets overtaken, what doesn't get overridden, are some of the kinds of things which are still big questions that we are addressing, right? Am I making sense? So, one big assumption I am making. Now, till now I have done fact-based presentation, based on research, based on what other people have said. Now what I am making will be conjecture, will be my own interpretation of where we could go, what it might mean. So one is, AI is based on knowledge, data, information, knowledge at multiple levels. So how do you, so for me, simplest way to look at it would be interpreting the knowledge, interpreting the information and data is where you get knowledge. That means the knowledge can really, the Google way of approaching knowledge versus Facebook way of approaching knowledge could be significantly different even if they come from the same data set, right? So because again it comes down to purpose, it again comes down to the goal, and it comes down to context. So on the other hand, the biological intelligence is not based on knowledge, it is based on wisdom. Wisdom is applied knowledge to a certain extent, but also there is a discernment that comes into the picture. If I use the word, Christian word discernment, or you can also talk about it from the context of the Indian, the Vedantic way, it is called Vivek, discrimination. What is the way in which you are discern and discriminate? So the idea of buddhi, they call it buddhi, samsayatmaka buddhi. It's one of the definitions in Vedantas. What it means is the one that questions and challenges and comes to the clear decision is what is called a decision making capability of a human intelligence. It is not based on emotion, it makes a decision. But it actually, because the key thing is there are 5 levels of intelligence that we talk about in the, whether it is Ayurveda or whether it is Vedanta, in the some of the spiritual documents, the research documents which they talk about. One is the physical intelligence, the body, which basically says biological way of looking at it and saying what is happening within the body, where am I, what am I doing, and what are the body sensations? Am I hungry? Do I need to go to bathroom? Is my leg actually, like theory has been standing there for a long time, so is he moving from one leg to another because he is getting tired? So there is a certain way in which the body gives you certain signals, and those signals are something which we may consciously or unconsciously or subconsciously follow through. So that means the intelligence can operate at all the 3 levels, but the body level intelligence majority of the times operates in the subconscious domain and unconscious domain. Then the breath. When we are anxious, we breathe differently. When we are relaxed, we breathe differently. When we are excited, we breathe differently. The breath essentially is the life force sometimes gets stuck. Like if you ever get surprised, you stop breathing for a few minutes. You say, what does that really mean? The way in which the body is and the breath are designed to go hand in hand to optimize resources and the blood flow and oxygen, where it needs to go, what it needs to go, and between the hormones and the breath, there is a way in which the circulatory system of the blood and all of those operate in a different kind of intelligence. So there is a anatomical intelligence, there is a physiological way of looking at it, and Then you have the emotions. Emotions are sometimes, in the recent research they call it energy in motion. That means, like I'm diabetic. If I didn't have sugar, let us say, then I become hypoglycemic, right? And so I can lightheadedness or something else. If I do, I begin to notice certain changes in my body, changes in my energy, and that gives me a certain signal. I may not interpret it. Like for example, I was talking to a friend of mine who went to an interview. I went with that person just to sit for a few minutes. This person, her mouth was parched. She kept on saying like this. And I said to her, do you want a glass of water? No. Are you tense? No, I'm not. Other people can see what's happening, but that person is not yet able to do that. And same thing, she went to the interview, they asked a question she didn't come prepared for. And do you know the answer? Yes. Sorry, at this moment I'm not able to recall. But as soon as she comes out of the interview, she was saying this is what it is, and she was beating herself up saying, if she were to remember, like 2 minutes ago, she could have aced that interview. So the energy, when it moves and how it moves, they are operating at a certain level of unconscious, subconscious way. Those, if we interpret them, again, information made into knowledge. If I say, this person is doing it again and again, she makes me feel upset, I'm really angry, I'm upset. Those, we call them feelings. So the simplest way to say that is, the biological intelligence at the level of energy are just certain energy movements. But if we name them, Mom, you said it again, you are not supposed to say that in front of my friends. There is a feeling that is there. So that means anything you make it cognitive. That cognitive recognition of a feeling brings it to the surface where you actually act out, and that's what we call as feeling. That's the fourth level of intelligence. And then we have obviously the thought and the thinking process. Of course, we have more thoughts than thinking. Like Einstein said, he had only 2 thoughts, original thoughts in his entire life. One resulted in what you call relativity theory. Second resulted in photoelectric effect. So when Niels Bohr came to him, and because Niels Bohr really appreciated Einstein's work, and they were both in Institute of Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. So when Niels Bohr came up with the atomic theory model, the quantum theory model, he first presented it to Einstein. And when he presented it to Einstein, Einstein looked at it and said, I love everything what you do, except that this quantum theory, you talk about AS, DF levels, they all are quantum discrete levels. I don't think they should be discrete, they should be continuous. He said, why? Because God doesn't play dice. I said, okay, that's your belief system. I said, well, think about it. Everything is continuous in God's world, it is not discrete. So your quantum theory cannot be discrete. Of course, that created a rivalry, and Einstein in one of the last days is supposed to have said, if I were to be able to think for myself and let go of my beliefs, because that belief is a thought that you did not create, but you took it upon yourself and made it your own. If I were to distinguish between having thoughts and thinking, maybe my relationship with Niels Bohr, or maybe together we would have come up with a general theory of relativity or quantum version of the theory of relativity, and they combining together was one of the sad points everybody mentions in 20th century. Physics was not complete because relativity and quantum mechanics never came together. So that means the thinking level, what we call intellect, is only the superficial level of intelligence. If there is is a way in which in the artificial intelligence, these 5 layers, by the way, some of you who are from an Indian background, you might have picked up these 5 layers are called 5 sheaths, called Annamaya Kosha, which is the body, biological sheath, biological intelligence. Then you have Pranamaya Kosha, which is the energy and the breath level, because our breath gives the attention, because attention is extremely important in intelligence. Just 3 days ago, if I were to have enough intelligence, I wouldn't have hit my car on a Lawrence Expressway and created a $10,000 damage to my car and something else. Because for just, obviously, for fraction of a second my attention was gone. We were going very nicely. For a moment I didn't brake, just went and hit another car. The attention is connected with the Pranamaya Kosha, with the breath. The third is what we called it as emotions. That is where you call it Manomaya Kosha. Manomaya means the mind, but it's the lower mind. The decisions that we make at an emotional level, the ones that we ask, the will, the want, what we call a volition in intelligence, the goal seeking. If it is a short-term goal seeking based on an emotion, that is considered to be one kind of intelligence, or it is something like, I don't like desserts, or I don't like eggplant, or I don't like this. Anything that you don't like, that you walk away from, and anything that you are attracted and you like, you move towards, that level of intelligence itself is considered to be a different layer. That if we are creating an architecture of multiple layers of AI, we need to differentiate one from the other, between the short-term likes and dislikes versus long-term goal-seeking behaviors, which is the buddhi, which is called Vijnanamaya Kosha. The one that gives you a strategic way of planning your future, planning your career. Should I join this company or not? What would be the benefits of leaving this existing company and move to some other company? Should I marry this person? In all of these kinds of strategic decisions are not made at the same level as the emotional mind. They are made at what is called Vijnanamaya Kosha, the one that allows you to really look at a larger perspective and apply that larger perspective into making decisions. So, what is that larger worldview? What is the larger belief system that we have? What are the life experiences that we have that is connected with what is called in the Indian way of thinking again, it's called Chit. Chit means to accumulate. Chitta is another level of the mind. Manas, Buddhi, Chitta. Chit at the level of mind means consciousness. That means when I am conscious fully at my body level, at my mind level, at my breath level and the context in which I am located, when I am fully awake and aware and context sensitive and aware of my own goals, the kind of decisions that I make are considered to be wise decisions. Because I am not only looking at what is it that I am getting, but by I taking it, like if I am I grew up with 3 other brothers and 2 sisters, so whatever food that was brought in, even though I was the eldest, I can't take a choicest piece, however much I want, and leave the rest to my brothers and sisters. It was to be divided in an appropriate way, otherwise, of course, my brothers and sisters would not like it, but my parents would not accept it, because they said, I cannot favor you. If I favor you too much, then it will actually create a lot more problems with other people. So the idea of what is fairness, what is ethical, what is moral, these kinds of things are extraordinarily important in setting the direction of a system to work appropriately, flexibly in a context for a longer period of time and become self-generative, learning, deep learning into some of these type of things. If we can do, then we are creating a wise system. And of course you can ask a question, what are some of the other characteristics? One is resilience, learning from failure. I think the AI systems are becoming very good at it. As a matter of fact, human beings need to learn to be more resilient, because failure leaves a lot more negative impression for us and a negative taste. Wherever we have failed a few times, we hardly want to learn. This is one area AI is actually doing extraordinarily well. Second one is adaptability. Again, as human beings, if we are willing to change and adjust and adapt to different circumstances and different scenarios, like she is a freshman in a college, right? So when you went from home, you don't have your mom to depend upon or your father to depend upon or something else. You have to be suddenly on your own and take care of various things, including getting up in time to go to class, right? And those are some things, while just 1 year ago, you didn't have to. But now, you have to do that. And you adapt it. Most of the people, we are capable of adapting to what the changing circumstances are, as long as we are open. If we have any barriers that are irrational, illogical, emotional, belief-based, past-based, individual person-based, all those kinds of things can actually impede our ability to operate in the biological intelligence. So that means, that's the reason why AI systems are extraordinarily efficient, but in some areas they have difficulty to imitate human behavior, because we are anything but adaptive, even though we have the capability. Third one we said is flexibility. Flexibility is being built in, but how do you design a system with flexibility from the beginning is something that I think there are lots of people are paying a lot of interest in, and redundancy. In this case, if you were to look at just these 4 characteristics, it looks like AI is doing very well when compared to human beings. Why is this important and why am I spending a lot of time in this? Is because, like somebody said, and I have various articles that I can show you, or I can see the reference, and I have got them in my Safari. But the key question everybody is beginning to ask is, are human beings evolving? Are we able to take advantage of our capabilities in the first place, or are we first afraid AI will take away our jobs, AI will first came the, what you call, jobs were being sent out outside the country. First we lost some jobs. Now AI comes and takes away some other parts of the jobs. What are we supposed to do? Most recent research, as well as the World Economic Forum, McKinsey, many of them are basically saying the soft skills like communication, adaptability, and the leadership, decision making, purpose driven approach, some of those presentation skills, all of those type of things are what makes us to be human. So there is a very interesting book that came out. It became very famous because everywhere I went they talked about this book, Harari book, Homo Sapiens. How many of you have looked at that? It is like a amazing book, isn't it? Yeah. And similarly, you must have heard of Dan Brown's recent book. How many of you have read Origin? No? You might want to try that out. That's a fiction. The novel in which artificial intelligence plays more role. And as a matter of fact, the entire premise of the Dan Brown's Origin, he basically says whether the God or how the evolution might have come up to this point is only one thing which we need to pay attention to. How are we going to evolve from here into the future? They say unless we coexist and figure out a way in which we can co-evolve with the artificial intelligence, where is it that we can add value, where is it that they can add value? If we don't do that, they become more dominant parts of actually the future. By 2020, they are assuming that 50% of what we can do can be done by artificial intelligence. So if that is the case, who are we going to be? How can we be the what you call as superhuman, or what he calls it as Homo Deus? Is that possible? Is that something that we can do? Another interesting comment somebody makes is, AI is not very good at jobs that require creativity, empathy, critical thinking, leadership, artistic expression, and a whole host of qualities that we traditionally think of as human. So, if we truly want to really succeed in the artificial intelligent age, we need to tap into our biological intelligence a lot more. That means we need to be more human than we need to be machines that we have been. So all the routine, whatever redundant activities, repetitive activities, all of them AI can take over. But it will give us more time to be truly double down on our own humanity. I think that is probably the kind of future, because even another report which says, I think this is the World Economic Forum report, communication, emotional intelligence, creativity, critical thinking. You can see creativity, and some of them are actually coming up again and again, because people define sometimes the human consciousness, the humanity is about being creative. If we are not creating, if we are not regenerative, if we are not empathetic, if we are not taking care of other people, if we are not looking at a big picture of a larger purpose, then we are no different from any other animal. So, in some respects, if we want to move towards a world where we can be successful, where artificial intelligence is already a dominant kind of intelligence, we need to begin to pay attention to higher order thinking and emotional skills. You have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, it seems that different cultures, different nations, different times of history have different levels of creativity.
Exactly.
Do you want to make some comments on that?
Yeah. First, please say a little bit more about it, and then I'll add to it.
Well, I mean, if you look like here in the Bay Area, we
Yeah.
have very, very high creativity for technology.
Right.
You know, if you look back at the Renaissance, it was creativity in the arts,
Yeah.
etc. Between countries, there are differences. Some cultures are more stifling in terms of allowing creativity.
Yeah.
Part of creativity is making mistakes.
Yeah.
And some cultures are not very tolerant of mistakes, etc. So
Yeah.
some thoughts, but
Excellent.
yours.
So let me add to what Thierry is saying. So for example, Thierry came from Belgium, I come from India. Right? In the beginning, we were looking at various conversations, because he is fun. We worked in international marketing for a little bit, and then I went into somewhere else. And what was interesting was, he brought an incredible amount of creativity. And coming from India, for me, some of the areas where he is creative, they were like, you can't do that. That's not acceptable. Or like, for example, one assistant was there when I was a manager. She brought in, and for this one, she put a dog, and she put, like a doll, like this one, and then she put some dog poop, just to show directions. I said, that is not very tasteful, or something else. She said, hey, this is fun, just chill out, okay, relax. But that was the week after, I think, there was a, okay, let me not go into some of the details of it, but it was a very interesting part to look at and say, for me, what I consider as creative, what you consider as creative, as Thierry is pointing out, seems to be based on certain set of restrictions, certain set of belief systems, certain set of traditions, certain set of growing up. Another way of saying, the culture seems to create some enablers or disablers for creativity, and also it allows certain things to be acceptable. So for example, Silicon Valley, we went from first transistors, the Bardeen and National Semiconductor, Fairchild, some of them. Then we moved along to microprocessors, then we moved along to software. Now we are moving along to the next generation of AI and design and 3D printing and biological stuff. So that means the content is not important. We can learn the content, but we have the adaptability and flexibility to learn what needs to be learned. What are the enablers, whether it is the educational system, whether it is the flexibility of husband works for one company, the wife works for a competitor company, or you gather with the diversity, the skills, the age groups, the kind of cultures, the languages and the backgrounds, maybe the acceptance of some of them and the ability to learn from them, cross-pollinate ideas from biology to chemistry, chemistry to computer science, somewhere else, or drama. I think this kind of ability to mix and match and learn from each other is probably a major advantage that we have that may not be there in a culture like Japan, culture like Vietnam, culture like India, culture like China, where they are much more homogeneous in certain approach and in certain ways of thinking. So, intelligence is something that prospers and that grows based on 4 levels. Like one is at a body level, it is the structure. Why is the structure? Systems, traditions, rules, beliefs are important because that creates safety. If people do not feel safe in a location, I do not feel safe in a particular group, I won't open my mouth because I don't know when if I put my hand out, it might be hit. And my inhibitions will stop my creativity. Ability to discuss, question, challenge, all of them are connected with structure, tradition, and what are we establishing at a body level. We may never say something. Like for example, in many of the things, I actually came with slip-ons because when I go to normally a hospital or a house or somewhere else, in an Indian house, they will ask me to leave the slippers outside, and which I do, by the way, myself also. So I came with it because even my wife, when she was wearing shoes with socks, I said, anyway, we are going to remove it. Why don't you just do it? Why is this? Because it's a pre-program. I am on autopilot. Safety and majority of our decisions are made by autopilot, which is unconscious intelligence. What is, in the brain research and what they talk about as the medulla oblongata and the primitive part of the reptilian brain, essentially, which controls 90 to 95% of our day-to-day, because the oxygen, the breathing, and our body temperature, our repetitive moments, what we learned, if we have learned, bicycle or swimming, all of these are happening at a body level. And that body level, we learn or we don't learn based on certain structures and systems that are set up. That's why the Ayurveda or natural medicine is all happening at a body level. You have to really do certain yoga, or you have to do certain practices, or you have to do certain rituals, or you have to do certain kinds of things at a body level. They may not make any sense to the, why do you do that? Those are old traditional stuff, that's okay. Sometimes you may have to follow certain set of procedures people have got, certain old, outdated kinds of things which people tell you, parents or seniors in the company tell you, you need to do this, these are the kinds of ways in which you get adopted. These are all intelligence happening at a body and they create safety. Then comes the heart, that is the emotions, which is where people connect with each other, you nurture intelligence. When you nurture the emotional relationships with each other, you allow people to learn from each other. That means they are open to testing out something they would not have tested out at a physical level. That means if you don't have a positive emotional connection with somebody else, you will not go outside your comfort zone and try out something. Most of us learn things by the peer connections and emotional connect. So the second one is creating a positive environment nurturing environment, whether it is at a school or an office, becomes important for certain kinds of intelligence to multiply at a much faster rate than what what intelligently, logically we can actually say. Like in Silicon Valley, things grow very quickly. But if you try to replicate the external conditions of Silicon Valley somewhere else, there are Silicon Gully, or there are Route 128 in near Boston, or there is a Bangalore is a Indian Silicon Valley, or there are so many other places. Why is that their intelligence doesn't grow in the same way? Because at a collective level, these 5 layers, various layers of the body level, safety, the heart level, emotional belonging, and the emotional connect, if these 2 are done, then at the intellect level, that is where we challenge and stretch. That is where the thinking happens instead of having thoughts. When we can think, the creativity is possible. If we cannot think for ourselves, like Martin Heidegger says it, right? In these thought-provoking times, the most thought-provoking thought is that human beings have a lot of thoughts. We have between 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. But in a month, we might have 1 or 2 or 3 good ideas. What does it mean? We don't think, we have thoughts. So that means the reptilian brain, which is only 5% of the overall brain, controls 95% of our behavior on a day-to-day basis. But the neocortex, which is 85% of our brain, which is what we are trying to emulate in the artificial intelligence models, but actually is used less than probably 5 or 10% of the time. So our thinking, our creativity, what we are calling as some of these higher order thinking and emotional skills are connected with the mammalian brain and the neocortex that we need to strengthen. Once we do that, we can coexist and we can work effectively with other people. So, what are some things which you can do? One is learn to tell stories. Stories are extraordinarily important for human evolution because the stories connect the emotion, the logic into a way in which it can go without the resistance to another person's psyche. When we tell stories, we are actually creating an entire scenario in people's psyche. So if you can learn to tell good stories in a way that it is interesting, you are changing the culture of the other person. You can actually change the intelligence of the person. In Indian context, there was a story that gets told that a king had some truant children who were almost of the age that they need to take over the kingdom, but they haven't learned what they need to learn to rule the kingdom. So then he challenged scholars to come in and say, is there anybody who can teach my children in the next 6 months to a year everything they need to learn that they have missed for past 10-12 years? So one guy called Vishnu Sharma, he comes in and the stories that he told are called Panchatantra. Panchatantra means 5 tactics to be an effective leader. All of them are stories about animals, like Aesop fables you have, and if you read those Panchatantra, you will gain the intelligence to apply, adapt and learn what you need to learn in new situations that have never been addressed. All of them are done through stories. Stories, metaphors, movies have got a very significant thing. Second is consciously pay attention to boosting your creativity. Like fail fast, we talk about it in Silicon Valley, fail fast, learn from it. If you can boost your creativity by thinking something outside, take a different route to office, go to places which you normally don't go, eat something which you have never tried, try out, when you go to see movies or something, go watch a movie in a language that you have never watched. Just pick up a movie from, when you open your Netflix or something else, pick some movie which you, of a different genre, different language, sit down and watch instead of getting bored and getting up. Boredom is the killer of intelligence and creativity. Third is learn how to sell. It doesn't matter what profession you are in. It doesn't matter whether you are a housewife or an engineer or a doctor or a student. Figure out consciously how to sell, because everything is about selling ideas, selling proposals, selling projects, selling an idea, anything to a relationship to anywhere else. You will recognize selling is something that actually taps into your intelligence in a very, very effective manner than anything else. Not business development, not marketing, it's actually selling. You need to be able to create an exchange, value exchange program. So, by the way, there are more things which you can see in the Fast Company. There are lots of stuff which they talk about references. So finally, it comes down to we have to build AI to amplify but not replace. There are several examples which talk about how a breast cancer research person, Path AI, had actually increased the biopsy accuracy from 85% to 99.5% because they used the AI. So that the human mind and the human eye cannot see, and that reduced a lot of different things. So there are lots of ways in which you can do. By the way, the X Labs is like they are doing some outstanding work on AI. Radhika Dirk says, companies that do not seek to amplify the human intelligence with diverse automated intelligence will be left behind. Okay, I'm not going to go through this. I just put it in case anybody asks questions about mechanism versus organism. And so, only point which it comes down to is consciousness has got two parts. One is intelligence, second is manifestation. Artificial intelligence addresses one part of that intelligence. Second part of it is how do you manifest the kind of world that we want to live in, that we are proud of, and that we want to nurture. That is in the manifestation. And those things, by the way, in Indian context, it is called Purusha and Prakriti. And the idea of the intelligence is the masculine characteristic of the Trinity. Vishnu, Shiva and Brahma are considered to be the intelligence representatives, but they are also considered to be completely impotent of being able to act without their projection, which is the manifestation, which is the feminine part, the Lakshmi and Saraswati and Shakti. That means unless the energy of intelligence and the manifestation capability, they go hand in hand, it doesn't work very well. We need to begin to operate with certain kinds of intelligence, and we need to look at whether it is our ego, whether it's our autopilot, whether it is our upbringing, or whether it is our belief system that stops us from learning. So I propose and stop saying the world we are living in requires conscious leadership, not just an unconscious way of moving through life, not adding any value to what we are doing. How do I define the consciousness which will connect with this? It is like awareness of awareness. Technology can give you awareness, but human beings can be aware of that awareness. That is what is called awakening. If we are not focusing on the second order level of intelligence, the first order intelligence will take over. But the key would be how do you apply it in the right context. Whether I am an Ayurvedic physician, whether I am a student, whether I am a intelligence professional, whether I am a technologist, I need to demonstrate leadership. That means in the context that I am living in, how do I bring my consciousness to do the best job that I can? It is not just for your company, it is not just for your tool, but if you can pay attention to that, you can actually succeed, whereas 90% of the other people are failing. So the field of conscious leadership requires artificial intelligence to do various things which we have been doing because we didn't have the access to technology. But once we have access to artificial intelligence, how do we take what we have to the whole new level, to the question of can we think what we have not thought before? Can we create what we have been hesitant? Can we relate in places where we have not? If we can demonstrate that kind of a way to connect and co-evolve, I have a feeling the future will not be something where we'll be afraid of artificial intelligence. The future will be something where both kinds of intelligences will make the world a better place to live. So thank you very much.
The two axes you drew here is your y-axis is supposed to be on the intelligence and the x-axis is the manifestation?
Correct.
Is that what you were trying?
Exactly, exactly. That's right. Because you need both.
So by
That's why-
context you are talking of is the manifestation.
Right.
The
Otherwise, see, there may be monks, Benedictine monks, Jesuit monks, Hindu monks. They are extraordinarily evolved in the consciousness. But if they sit on the mountain top in their ashrams, and if they are not married, if they don't understand the context, they may tell you this is what you need to do. They may give you 10 commandments, or they may say this is what needs to be done, or you better follow this or else. But some people relate, many people don't. For the simple reason they have a lot of consciousness, but they are not operating in the 21st century millennial context that we live in. But we may have a lot of context, like young people may have a lot of context, but they may not have as much consciousness. Why should I do it? Just because you say it is not acceptable to me. You need to explain everything to me. Everything is not explainable, because some of them are at a level of, people may say, oh, I did it because my father told me, or I did it because this is how we did it in India, or I did it because in my religion this is a practice. What I recommend is, if you want to be a conscious leader, try it out unless you have a serious objection to it, or it is like something unacceptable. Because what you pick up at a body level, what you pick up at an emotional level, what you pick up at an intelligence, a cognition level, are completely three different intelligences. They are actually operating in three different planes. And if because of those three different planes, when you align them, the alignment at the body and the heart and the mind, then what you come up with will be not only creative, but also will have larger implications. Your contribution, that is what makes you thought leader, as they call it. Questions, comments?
On behalf of our Ayurvedic Academy and the Natural Medicine Clinic here, I want to thank Dr. Kaipa for explaining a very complex topic like artificial intelligence versus biological intelligence in a very applicable way in how we can understand this and how we can apply this in our lives. And to be able to give such wonderful similes from both the Eastern culture and from the Western current context. It reminds me of my father who 31 years ago told me, well, if you want to go into medicine, if you get into traditional medicine, you'll become a medical technician, whereas if you get into Ayurveda and natural medicine, you'll become a healer, which sort of is the comparison between the artificial intelligence and the biological intelligence, where there is room for intuition, there is room for making personalized evaluations and diagnosis and treatment plan. And we see that here in our clinic is that we have many doctors, registered nurses, people who are into the field of artificial intelligence do come and seek our expertise and our services because they want to get the benefit of the biological intelligence. So thank you again, Dr. Kaipa, and thank you all of you for coming and participating here in this very stimulating discussion. We could easily spend many more hours in getting into it. So if there are any more comments or questions, feel free to go ahead. I would also invite all of you to participate into more lectures, workshops, seminars that we will be doing here in the next few months, and we'll keep you posted. Thank you for making our dream come true here, which is there will be a board here coming here, which I want to say Kavya Shastra Vinodena Kala Gachanti Panditaha, which means that the wise spend their time with literature or poetry, science, and also humor. And out of those three, that is the literature, science, and humor, the science is only that can head to artificial intelligence, whereas the poetry and the humor goes only with the biological intelligence. So I think we have the majority of the biological intelligence here. So thank you again for participating in this wonderful activity here. Thank you for doing this for the community. And then thank you, Thierry, for recording it, because we will be able to share it with the rest of the people. So feel free to ask more questions, feel free to interact. If you have any questions for us, let us know. Thank you once again.
Did that make sense, ma'am?
Well, I'm inspired, and I have to get busy and use my intelligence and keep learning.
That's wonderful.
And,
Yeah.
Yeah, I have all kinds of little sayings that people think I get bored. I'm never bored. I always have more to get done and get with it, to do than I can get through ever.
Wow.
These are wise words of a almost 101-year-old lady here. Okay, she comes to our clinic, and in the reception area, I see her knitting and tatting. She's always creative. She, even at this age, has a great sense of humor, always smiling, always enthusiastic. So you are a real inspiration for all of us. Thank you.
Any comments, any other questions? Please go ahead.
Knowledge is, I can't remember things you're saying knowledge is, when you're my age you forget, and then if you lose it, just stop thinking about it and it comes back.
It is knowledge.
Knowledge is,
Knowledge
I'm
versus
gonna
wisdom.
remember that, and
Knowledge versus
knowledge is wisdom.
Knowledge
Yes,
versus wisdom.
That's it,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And if you keep learning, which I'm inspired to do after this, and I try always to do that. I do Tai Chi Cha also,
Oh, wow.
which my wonderful daughter teaches, and I keep my body active and with her help, and she's a blessing. and not learning always, and going places and doing things, it keeps you young.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Thank you.
For some of the people in AI field, is this something that is connected? Is this resonant, in a way?
Yeah, the co-evolution is an important part.
Yeah.
How when as we transfer our own intelligence into the machine, is it possible for us to use that process of transfer? During the process of transfer, and our avatars are online, is it possible for us to watch what our avatars are doing and therefore train our avatars a little bit better so that we actually co-evolve our own selves?
At a very mechanical level, the kind of neural networks that I work with, the main, it's used to optimize some function, right? And what I found interesting is that all of the functions that we optimize have to do with efficiency or some cost.
Yeah.
And ethical costs are never figured in, and so just like you talk about the price of a product, well, so far no one took into account the cost to the environment. That's never figured in the cost. Similarly, in most of these AI systems, the objective function is one of the crucial things, that even at a mechanical level, if there was a way to encode ethical concepts into the objective function, we could mechanically train a system so that it could do it. So, train it with examples which show bad ethical outcomes, versus good outcomes. But that's never weighed in. It's usually something like efficiency or some economic value rather than the effect. Like you take an action and it might have a much wider effect on the environment that you didn't factor it at all. And that might say, okay, go and do this, but that might actually be hurting in the long term. So, I think there are ways to include that even at that very basic level.
Then the AI is, actually the entire AI is mostly developed by the software. It's a collective software engineers intelligence. So if the software engineers did meditation, maybe we'll have that. Because I think in the end what you're getting is not, they are the ones who are creating it. So as you talked about all the biological culture and all that, actually it is dictated by them because the rest of us are going to use it.
Yeah.
But if the creator themselves don't have any time or, if they don't do meditation or anything or any training, we will not be able to see. Yeah.
Exactly. So if the AI designers are coming from a higher level of consciousness, more systemic level of looking at ethical, social, economical and objective oriented type of things, of course the design becomes a little bit more complex. But the longevity of it, applicability of it, broadening of scope can also have implications. But if we don't start thinking about it, it doesn't work. So the consciousness with which we design will limit what we do. That's why I kept saying the body of the system, the structure, unconsciously our assumptions, our biases, our intelligence is shaping the design of whatever we do, whether we like it or not. How conscious are you and how open are you to bring in some of these other, what you might call elements that you have to pay attention to?
So it's a fact that NASA scientists are taught to do pranayama and meditation because when they have to take decisions in split second, they have to enhance their awareness, and to enhance their awareness to be able to decipher the data coming from various monitors, they have to take the use of certain biological approaches of pranayama and meditation. So like you were saying, Manjuji, it has the scientists, if they use some of these biological intelligence approaches, that's where we could be eventually figuring in the ethical aspect of developing the artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and lastly, like somebody said, dog sees us as human beings. It doesn't look at us as human beings, it looks at us as super dogs. Why? Because the frame of reference for a dog is a dog. It's a dog or not dog. So, same way, if we want to do with higher consciousness, higher intelligence if we need to operate at that. Just knowing it will not do it, you have to be that. You have to operate from that particular field. That is what they call supermind. Aurobindo talked about supermind, and there are some very interesting ways of capabilities of a superhuman being. What Harari is talking about, yes, we can look at it from a singularity university. There is one university here. The founders of Singularity University also, Ray Kurzweil and some of them, looked at it from one particular perspective, very powerful perspective. That everything evolves, but it is also called like a blind watchmaker approach. If you put together a watch and it will work, that is one particular way of looking at it. Another way is there an intelligent design that is systemic from there, and then it can co-evolve. That would be an interesting way to design it. So there are intent, values, purpose, which we call objectives, right? I didn't go into further application into wisdom and wisdom things because time is enough, and also I think there are enough number of content and concepts.
This is very thought-provoking, and I know that we will have many more future opportunities. About 3 months ago we had a wonderful presentation here about how to apply concepts of the ancient philosophy from Bhagavad Gita into our personal life. And so today we got remained into a more interesting topic. So I hope Dr. Kaipa will agree to giving some more presentations in the near future, as and when we can organize them here. Thank you once again for your time. Thank you once again everyone for being here and participating in this. I'll open this door here. So that I'll see how to make it.